Hi, how you doing? Chef Hal here today, and I'm going to give you a little lowdown on some of the ingredients we're working with today. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start with our mise en place. So we have all of our mise en place in front of us, and we have our cutting board, our knife, and I also have a wet paper towel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the board, I'm going to place the paper towel underneath, and then I'm going to put the cutting board back so that now it does not move. So you don't have to worry about the board slipping and sliding when you're doing your chopping. So what we're going to be using herbs that we picked from our garden and a couple of fresh root vegetables also. So first we're going to work with our chives. These are similar to an onion, the same similar flavor and smell, and those we're going to use and we're going to chop them up very fine. This here we have thyme. This happens to be lemon thyme, but you can use either regular thyme or lemon thyme. It does not matter. This we're going to pull each part off because we don't want the stem in there. Then here we have our rosemary, and we're going to make sure that we pick this off too because you don't want any of the stem in there also because that's very woody. And then here we have our flat leaf parsley, which we're going to chop as well, and some garlic, and also some shallots. And I'm going to show you the proper way to cut them. Now, we're going to take our chef knife, and the first thing you do is the proper way to hold it. So how you want to hold it actually is you want to use your pointer finger and your thumb, and then you want to use your 3 fingers to wrap around the knife. This is the proper way to hold it. Now it doesn't always feel very comfortable because you're just learning like this. A lot of people like to hold the knife like this, some people like this, but the problem with that is you don't have as much stability on the knife. So you're less likely to cut yourself when you're holding it like that or like that. If you hold it like this too, you just don't have the same grip. So that's why you use your 2 fingers and then you wrap the other 3 around. So, after you wrap your 3 around, you're all about a rocking motion. So you always want to let the knife do the work. You don't want to push down like this, because if you're pushing down, you're crushing your ingredient, especially working with something as delicate as fresh herbs, like this flat leaf parsley. So you want to make sure you're rocking the knife, so that the knife is doing all the work. So you never want to lift the tip off of the board. You always want to keep the tip on and just continuously rocking. Rocking, rocking, rocking. Let your arm go all the way through. Let the knife do the work all the way through. This is a nice green ingredient and we want to keep it green. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So what you do first is you get an amount of parsley that's easier to work with. So you don't have to use the whole entire thing. So you take a small bunch and you put the rest on the side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get it all together and roll it up a little bit. Now what you do is you want to keep your fingers tucked because the most important thing is safety. Number 1 rule in the kitchen. So when you're using your knife, you want to make sure you keep your fingers tucked in and your thumb also tucked in. So you should almost look like a claw. So you want your grip to be like that. Now, all these motions are not going to feel comfortable because it's the first time you're doing them. But the more you practice, the more it's going to just come like a normal thing for you every day, like putting on your sneakers. So let's start our chopping. We have our fingers ready, and we have the knife against here so that we don't have to worry about cutting ourselves. And we start with the tip down, and we're going to rock the knife. See that? You rock the knife. Rock. And just continuously let the knife go against the back of your finger, and you're going to continuously move. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flip the ingredients on the bottom to the top. And now we're going to turn it and chop again. So get your fingers ready, and we're going to rock and chop. Remember, rock, rock, rock. Always rocking the knife. Always rock, 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 rock. Now you want to bring it together, and we're going to rock it again. Now I'm not just going up and down right now. I'm still rocking it. Rock, 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 rock. But we're chopping it, so we want to try and get it as fine as we can. Chop, 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 chop. But rock the knife, rock the knife. And then You use your blade, and this is another important thing. When you're scraping, you want to either use your blade on 2 angles, like this or like this. You never want to drag it this way because you're going to dull your blade. So you want to do it again, flip it, and then we're going to rock. All right, and that is our fresh chopped flat leaf parsley. So this here is our chopped parsley. This is our first ingredient that we have finished and we've prepped for our mise en place. So we're gonna put this on the side, and now we're gonna move to our next herb. So now we're gonna work with our rosemary. Now rosemary, just like parsley, is you don't want to use the stem. So you have to pull off all the leaves. And make sure you get no excess stem, because the stem, again, is very woody and it'll change the whole flavor of what you're trying to do with the actual dish. All right, so now that we got all of our rosemary all ready to go, we're gonna take the excess, and same as before, you can save this for stock. So we're gonna get our leaves all close together. We're gonna get our knife, we're gonna put our 2 fingers, and then wrap the other, so we have proper ready to go for safety. Get your fingers, tuck your fingers and your thumb in, and put the blade on the back of your fingers, and then we're gonna start rocking. And rock, and rock, and rock, and rock. And now we're gonna flip it. We're gonna rock some more. So, now that we have this, we're gonna get this ready just like the parsley. We're gonna put it into a dish, and then we're gonna move on to our next herb. So here's our chopped rosemary. We're gonna put that over here, and then move on to our next ingredient. So now our next ingredient that we're going to be working with is going to be our chives. Now chives are really great. We're actually going to be using them for 2 dishes today. We're going to be using them for herb crusted pork loin, as well as for our chive biscuits that we're going to be making. So first what we're doing is just trying to make sure that everything's straight. We just cleaned them after we picked them from our garden, and we're going to make sure they're all straight and organized so it's easier to chop, and just pick out any little excess that you don't think you'll need. Chives are actually very cool herb. They're actually really good. You could actually chop them and you're able to freeze them. So you could pick them all at the end of the season and freeze them so you have them for the winter. And they hold very well. Okay. So now that you got everything ready, what I like to do is I like to make it a little bit more manageable. So I'll cut it in half first. Bring them together, so now they're not as big. And we're gonna do the same as we've been doing. It's all about the rock, so keep your fingers tips bent, your thumb tucked in, knife tip down, and rock. And rock that blade, and rock, and rock, and keep on rocking. Rock that blade. Another thing you could actually do with chives is they actually grow flowers, and you can use the chives and the flowers, and you can make chive vinegar. And you can actually let it sit for a couple of months, and then it actually turns pink, which is really, really cool. And then you have a pink chive vinegar, which is really nice for when you're making dressings, for appetizers, for salads, and dishes like that. All right. So here's our next herb that we chopped. These are our chopped chives. All right, now the last herb that we're going to be working with today is going to be our thyme. Thyme is a really very, very versatile herb. It can be used in so many different things. It's used a lot in classical French cuisine, but it really can be used in so many different dishes. It goes so far. It's great for when you're roasting meats or stuffing any kind of meat. It goes with chicken, pork, beef. It goes with seafood. It's great with scallops or fish. It really goes a very long way. It's really, really lovely fragrance too. Again, this is another ingredient that we picked from our garden, which again, I highly recommend. When you're doing herbs and using vegetables that you really truly enjoy to eat, it's wonderful when you can go out back and pick it yourself, because then you get the enjoyment of growing it and picking it. And there's really nothing better than consuming something that you grew yourself. It really is just a wonderful feeling. And I understand that some people might live in the city and have apartments and don't have all the luxury of a backyard and space, but you can always get a small planter and try to utilize maybe a windowsill or something like that. It might be a cool idea. Or even you could do a small hydroponic garden in your home so you can get herbs and stuff like that throughout the year. It's a good idea to try. It just helps with your cooking, and it'll just bring that little bit more flavor and pizzazz to your dishes. So after we pull all of our thyme, you don't want to use the stems, but again, you could utilize the stems for such things as stocks, which is just like all the other stems that you had. So it's something you don't have to throw out because there's still a lot of flavor in it. Just because you don't want to cook with it doesn't mean that it doesn't have free flavor, is what I like to call it. So here's all of our thyme, and now I'm going to show you how to chop that. So again, get your fingers ready, tuck your fingers and your thumb, knife tip down, and it's all about the rock. Rock that knife. Rock, 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 rock. Rock, 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 rock. And again, the reason that you're rocking the knife, not going straight down and chopping it, is all because you don't want to bruise your herbs. Herbs are very delicate. You don't want to be bruising them by smashing them and pushing down on them. It'll make them more brown than green. And here's our fresh chopped thyme. So the shallot is from the onion family. It's a root vegetable. I always think it's a mix between a white and red onion because it has a pinkish hue to it on the inside. It has layers just like an onion. It can make you cry just like an onion can make you cry. It has a very sweet flavor to it, especially when you saute it or caramelize it to bring out the sugars in it. And it has a wonderful, wonderful flavor at the end after you give it a nice roast as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to chop our shallot. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take the core off, which is where it grows. That's how you know it's a root vegetable. And then we're going to take the tip off. We're going to give a quick little slice just down here so that we could peel off that first layer. And there you go. Now we have our shallot. Now, again, all this excess here, you could throw it in the garbage if you want, but this is something you could use to make a stock. So you can mix all this stuff, all these onions and scraps, could just go in a bowl that you keep in your refrigerator. When you're using all this scrap, you don't have to just use this. You could also use these skins in your stock as well. Now, if you're making a sauce, you don't want to use skins, but when you're using a stock, all you're doing is enhancing the flavor of water. So any kind of extra flavors and ingredients that you're adding will help to bring the flavor of the stock to have more depth. Now I'm going to show you the proper way to cut a shallot is also the proper way to cut an onion. So now what we're going to do is we're going to keep the core end and the back. You're going to take your fingers and you're going to do just like you were cutting before. You tuck your fingers in and you put your thumb in. Now you're going to put your tip in your blade. You're going to push forward just like you're rocking and then rock back a little bit. Push forward just like you're rocking, and you're going to rock back again. And you do this a couple of times until you get to the top. All right? And you don't go all the way through. That's why you leave the core. Then you're going to go down. So you're making like a graph. Now we're going to cut. So now you turn it. You tuck your fingers like we were doing. And then tip down and rock. And rock. Blade all the way through. Alright, and there's your chopped onions. Now this core, you're going to save this for your vegetable stock that you have. So this is all good stuff, so don't just throw it in the garbage. And we're going to get our next one and do the same thing. Remember, core on the end. Take your fingers, just like you're cutting them, tuck your fingers in. You're going to forward and rock back. Down with the tip. so you're not smashing. Get your fingers ready, tuck again, tip down, and rock. Remember, all the way through. You have to have your knife go all the way through that it cuts. Don't smash, let the knife do all the work for you. And there you go. Now you have your chopped shallot. So garlic, when you're looking to buy it at a store, the easiest way to find if it's fresh is to touch it. So you have to squeeze the top. That's the trick. So if the top is very firm, that means that's fresh. If it's soft, that means that's not ripe and you should discard it or not purchase it. Now what you do is you have to dig your finger in and you pull out the cloves. That's how you break it apart. And you take the skin off. This is not something you would save. You know, you're saving the onion skins and things for the stock, but garlic is not something you would want to put into a stock. It would make it a little bit bitter. So we're going to discard the skins. So the way that you clean garlic, there's multiple different ways. I can give you a couple different tricks, but one thing that I like to do first personally is I always like to take the core out first. So take out the core. And then what I like to do is I like to do the smash method. You put your knife down, you give a quick 2 smashes, and then it'll peel right off. And now you have your garlic ready to go. And the other thing that I like to do with garlic is I like to take the core out. That's the other reason I like to mash it, because it makes it easier to take the core out. Sometimes when you get garlic, you'll have this core in here, and I don't really like to cook with that. I feel it adds an extra little bit of bitterness. So I try to take that and the little bit of membrane skin there too, I try to take out. So then we have nice clean garlic that's ready for chopping. Sorry. Now another little knife trick that I could teach you is when you're using a cutting board, you always want to put your waste to one side and your prep to another side so you don't mix them. So I'm pushing all the excess prep over here in the waste and then all the extra ingredients that we're using over here. So I'm going to discard this before I chop everything so that it doesn't get mixed. Now this is different than everything else we've chopped so far because it has more texture to it. So it's all about the rock. Remember, keep your fingers down and your thumbs tucked, because again, number one most important thing is safety. Safety, safety, safety. Always be careful when working in a kitchen. So we're gonna rock, 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 rock. Keep rocking, rock, 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 rock. Remember, continue to rock. Always rocking the knife. That is the key. Keep the blade going and rock, 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 rock. Let's keep it all together. Keep it going. Keep it together. And then chop some more. And here's our chopped garlic. So these are our ingredients for our Herb Crusted Pork Tenderloin. Here is our chopped thyme, chives, parsley, rosemary, shallots, and garlic. Alright, so now what we're going to do for our recipe for our Herb Crusted Pork Tenderloin is that we're going to mix all of our ingredients that we just chopped and we're going to make our rub. So what we're going to do is mix all of our herbs first. So first we're going to add our thyme, then our chives, then our parsley, then our rosemary, then our shallots, and then our garlic. Now we're add our salt, pepper. I'm using 1 part canola oil and 1 part extra virgin olive oil. The reason is canola oil has a higher smoke point so that it won't burn in the pan. Extra virgin olive oil doesn't have as high a smoke point, but it has a lot more flavor. So when you marry them together, it'll raise the smoke point. Now that we put all of our ingredients in a bowl, we're going to mix them together to let them meld and let the flavors come together. All right. Can you smell that through the screen? Smells good here. Hi everybody. Back again, and we're going to be making our sweet potatoes for our roasted sweet potatoes with toasted cumin and sweet cinnamon. Now, what we're going to do first is we're going to peel our potatoes. Now, before you peel your sweet potatoes, there's something you have to do first. You have to put a piece of plastic wrap down. Now, the reason you do this is that it just makes it so much easier to clean up later when you have to clean up all your scraps. So now, first thing you want to do is you always want to put the tip going away from you, and always go away. So when you're peeling, you want to make sure that the peeler is going away from you, not towards you. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to cut off the cores and the very ends, and if you have any extra skin that you want off. Now, so super easy to clean. Just roll up your mess and throw it in the trash. And now we can get started on dicing our sweet potatoes. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do a medium dice on our sweet potatoes. Now, what a medium dice is, it's a uniform cube so that every single piece is the same. And the reason that this is so important and uniformity is such a significant part of cooking, which is why knife skills is such an important part of cooking, is because everything has to cook evenly. When you put something in an oven, when you put something in a pan, it has to cook at the exact same time as everything else. If you have something that's big and something that's small, one will be cooked and one will be raw. Or one will be overcooked and one will be undercooked. So you need to try and get everything so it cooks evenly so everything works together. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you make a flat space. So you cut off a little piece so that it doesn't roll. That's very important because you don't want a sweet potato that's rolling all over. You're more likely to cut yourself. And number one rule in the kitchen is safety first. So now what we do is we're going to take a little piece of this side off. And we're going to put that over here too because that's our waste. And now we're going to try and make a couple of cuts that are going to be the same. So we're going to start here with our tip, fingers in and tucked, down and rock. Down and rock. Down and rock. Sometimes you got to give a little extra oomph. And one more time, down and rock. All right. Now we're putting our excess over there. Now, this one we're going to bring over here. Now you can even it out if you like to make it perfect. And we're going to start here. Bring our fingers back. Tuck your thumbs in. And we're going to go down and all the way through to make the cut. Down and all the way through to make the cut. Down and all the way through to make the cut. Now we're going to turn them. You trim this side just a little bit just to make it uniform. You're going to make sure that it's all even with the knife. And then we're going to rock. And then we're going to rock. And the trick here is that you use your thumb as a guide. So keep the thumb on one side and your pinky on the other. And the other 3 fingers will be tucked underneath. And that'll be the guide for your knife. Now we're going to down and rock. Down and rock. Down and rock. One more time. Almost done. And there you go. Now we have uniform sweet potatoes that will all cook at the exact same temperature. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our medium diced sweet potatoes and we're going to put it into a glass bowl so that we can oil it and season it and then put it on a pan so we can roast it. So, let's take our sweet potatoes. There we go. Hi everybody. So what we're going to do now is we are going to make our chive and cheddar biscuits. I'm going to give you this nice and simple recipe that is going to make everybody who comes over ask you for the recipe. It is that great. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick things and we're going to get to it. So what we have here is we got our mise en place already ready. We have a cup and a half of flour. We have a teaspoon of salt. We have 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, our chopped chives, a cup and a half of our heavy cream, and our aged cheddar cheese. Now you can buy it pre-grated or you can buy a block and grate it yourself. I'm going to be grating it myself, so I have a box grater here that I put on a piece of plastic wrap, and I'm going to grate the cheese. Now that we have all of our cheese grated and our ingredients ready, we're going to mix everything and get our biscuits going. So the one thing that's the most important thing about biscuits is you have to have frozen butter. That is the key ingredient, is frozen butter. So we have our butter in our freezer, which we're going to get out and we're going to cube. And that'll be the last thing that we're going to add with the heavy cream. So let's start adding our dry ingredients first. So we have our flour. We're going to add our salt. Add our baking powder. We'll add our cayenne pepper. And we will add our chives and cheese. All right, now we're going to get our butter out and we're going to chop it. And then we're going to move on to our cream, and I'm going to show you how to mix it. All right, so what we're using today is a pork tenderloin. Now this comes off of a pork loin, but this is the tenderloin which comes off of it. This itself is a pork chop, this is also a pork loin, which has the entire piece. See this little piece here? This little piece here is the tenderloin, which is what this is on a whole one. So I just want to show you the difference between a pork chop and a pork tenderloin. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our tenderloins and we're going to try and clean them. We just want to take off any excess fat, any excess waste that we don't really want, without taking off too much meat. Now the other thing we want to do is take off the tendon. See this right here? This right here is a tendon. It's actually a muscle. So what you do is you have to get in there and then you put your knife on an upward angle, kind of saw back and forth so you can kind of see how you get that off. You can see how fibrous it is if you look at it. Alright, so now after we get all that excess waste off that we don't want, this is what we're looking for. Now we're going to do the other one. Now generally when you buy a pork tenderloin, it'll generally come with 2. So I'm going to clean this one as well. right, so again, this is what we want them to look like after we clean them up.